Today we're going to be checking out my pedal board from the company Holeyboard. And we're going to talk a little bit about the company and what they've been up to. So, yeah, here we go. Good afternoon. How's it going, everyone? I hope you've been doing well. If this is your first time here, hi, my name's Miles. I do music stuff. And today we're going to be talking about pedal boards. The simplest way to describe a pedal board is just simply a flat surface of some sort that you would attach individual effect pedals to so that you can easily access them in a live setting or in a studio setting. You can attach them in whatever order you want them to be in, and in most cases, the pedal board that you have has the ability to attach some sort of power supply to it as well, so that if you are going out and playing a concert or something where you need multiple effects that all need to be powered because they don't have batteries, you could bring your power source with you. It's a resource that makes utilizing pedals in a studio or a live setting a much easier experience to undertake. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about my pedal board and the company that makes it, Holeyboard. But before we even talk about my board, let's talk about the company and its upbringing. In 2014 in St. Paul, Minnesota, Chris Trafilio, which I hope I said right, decided to step away from his previous endeavors of designing blowtorches, sleds, and other products of that sort to embark on building a new company, that company being Holeyboard, or more specifically at the time, Chemistry Design Works with an E. And with this new company, the main objective is to design products specifically with musicians in mind. And there was a handful of products that were available in the initial rollout of the company, but the main product was their pedal boards. And since the beginning 8 years ago, Chris has been taking the company and his ideas through a bit of a transition, at least as far as the products that are being offered and how they're being offered. And I would argue that that transition hasn't always necessarily been a smooth one, which could be the reason why some of the shortcomings that I plan to point out in this video today exist in the first place. Could also be the underlying reason as to why the Holeyboard Instagram account has been down for some time and why there's no new posts on the UK account either. But we'll talk about all of that. Now, if you were to go to the Facebook page for Holeyboard and go through the photos that are posted on there, the earliest photo that's on there is from 2012. So I'm guessing that it's about this time that Chris really kind of started solidifying ideas as far as products to present to the world with this new company of his. I think it was also around this time that I had first discovered Holeyboard, looking through the pages of the digital magazine Tone Report, which was associated with the YouTube channel Pro Guitar Shop, and had gear demos hosted by Andy Martin, who you probably know from seeing him do gear demos now for Reverb.com. Regardless of the specific year that I had first discovered Holeyboard, once I first saw the design for the pedal boards, I was immediately intrigued. Now, for me personally, what I liked the most about these boards when I first discovered them was the fact that it sort of had an aesthetic that seemed to be inspired by skateboard decks, just having these like pressed sheets of wood that comprised the two levels that made up the entire board. The two-level design was also an intriguing factor to me as well, because up to that point, any pedal board that I had, everything was on one singular surface. There was also a conscious deviation from utilizing Velcro as a means of adhering pedals to the surface of their boards, which I found to be intriguing as well. Now, I've had a number of pedal boards over the years of different brands and different sizes, including a homemade board that really suited my need to have all of my pedals in one singular row. It made it so that I could see everything and access everything at the same distance away from where I was standing in front of the board itself, and it also made it next to impossible to play any small venues with my old band. It was also so heavy that I had to put wheels on the back of it and roll it like luggage that you would bring with you on a plane. And over the years, with each board that I've owned and made, my main issues that usually have come up have to do with the size of the board itself or how I'm powering the pedals that I'm putting on that board. And then it would become a matter of how many pedals can I fit on this board and power using the power source that's associated with this board before I have to include an outside power source. But regardless of the company and what board and what size I had at the time, throughout all those different designs, the biggest issue I found myself having to deal with has always been the Velcro. For those of you out there that are currently utilizing Velcro in your pedal board setup, I'm sure you can relate to the scenario of setting everything up on your board, getting everything wired into the place where you want it, positioning everything in a place where it's strategically going to be where you need it to be in a live setting, and then putting your board in your car on a warm day as you head off to a gig, only to get there, unzip your gig bag, and find that everything is in disarray. Because while you were on your way to the gig, or you had your pedal board in the car while you were at work, and you had plans to go to rehearsal after work, the adhesive that was attaching the Velcro to your pedals all got really soft and lost its grip on each of the pedals. And so everything slid away from where it was supposed to be in the first place. Obviously, this is going to be less of a problem for you if you're located somewhere where the temperature is fairly cold, but at the same time, if it's cold enough, that adhesive can still fail. And for those out there that right now are looking at their screens and they're scolding me about getting the right Velcro in order to serve the purposes that I need it for, I just want to first respond to you and let you know, you're right. However, in most cases, when you order a pedal board from a manufacturer, when they send it out to you, they also send it out with Velcro. So you as the customer, or at least for me as a customer, my assumption is that this is what I need in order to serve the purposes that I need them to serve. And as far as utilizing like the heavy duty Velcro that they have at the hardware store or at Lowe's or Home Depot, that comes with its own problems. For example, if you're just trying to remove or reorganize the order of your pedals on your board, you probably don't want to take the time that's attached to having to stand there with your foot propped up against your board as you pull with all your might to remove one single pedal from the Velcro that's attached to the board. Or if you find yourself in a position where you want to sell a piece of gear and now you're trying to remove those Velcro strips from the product itself, that can be frustrating for a number of reasons. For one, it's going to hurt your fingers trying to remove this heavy duty adhesive off the pedal's surface. But also, you run the risk of potentially removing important labels and paint from that pedal, which, as far as resale value, isn't great. And the other issue that you run into when it comes to utilizing Velcro with your pedal board is that some pedals have feet on them, and you have to remove those feet in order to have a flat surface to put the Velcro on. I could put a Velcro strip on here, but as long as there's a distance between the feet and the bottom surface of the pedal, that Velcro isn't really going to be that effective. So you'd have to take those feet off, and then if you're planning on reselling anything at some point in the future, you got to make sure you hold on to those feet and then figure out how you're going to stick them back on the pedal later on. So yeah, after dealing with Velcro for years now that there's another option available to me, I'd rather not continue down that same path of frustration. And Holeyboards effectively addressed that problem for me, because now we're not dealing with Velcro. We're attaching the pedals to the surface of their boards using zip ties. So I have secure placement of all my pedals, and it's easy removal. Don't have to worry about dealing with any Velcro strips. And as far as resale value of everything that I'm using in this capacity, I don't have to worry about any strip paint or any labels getting ripped off because I'm trying to remove the Velcro and that went along with it. So I was pretty much sold from the beginning. Also, the boards came with a handle on the top of it so that when you finished your set in a live setting, you can grab it and yank it off the stage and run away where you need to get out of the way of the other bands that are coming up after you. It's like the monkey grip on Steve Vai's guitars, except in this case it's like actually functional and not completely stupid. And so in 2014, I got my hands on my first Holeyboard. And the other thing that I really loved about those boards is that there was just like this plainness to them. It was just two sheets of wood. And when you got it, you had this sense of infinite possibilities as far as your own personal spin on the board, as far as how you visually present it to other people. Like, you can do whatever you want and be as creative as you want in terms of making that board your own. And this was a case for a lot of customers, because if you go and look through the photos that are on the company's Facebook page, you'll find a bunch of pictures of other customers' boards where they took it upon themselves to paint them and add designs to them and do all these cool things. And I think early on, Chris might have also offered some sort of like custom paint job pricing and things of that nature. But for the most part, it was just people doing their own things with their boards. And even in the manual that came with the board, Chris offered instructions as to how to go about applying a polyurethane cover to your board so that it protects it from like water damage and stuff like that. But if that wasn't your thing and you didn't feel like getting real down and dirty as far as doing all the protective work to your board when you got it, which I assume that was a number of people, because eventually Chris had you covered and he began offering pre-finished boards. So the same models that initially were offered by the company, but now finished with paint and a sealant on it as well, so that it's protected from water damage and things of that nature. So all bases were essentially covered. All you had to do from that point on was just assemble the thing and throw your pedals on it. And then from there, you're done. Simple. And so it was clear early on that Chris and the company were bringing something truly unique to the pedalboard space. And it was being offered in a number of different designs, or at least different sizes. The flagship was the regular Holeyboard, but you also had what was referred to as the amp topper, which essentially was just a top shelf with the brackets and some feet for it. So if you only had like 3 pedals that you were using and you just wanted to like slap them as they sit on top of your amp, you could have that. A step up from the regular board was the wide model, which I eventually upgraded to, and was simply a wider version of the regular model of the Holeyboard. And then from there was another model known as the Square. And we're going to talk about the Square a little later, but we'll save that. There was also another model known as the Big Kahuna, and the name truly suits it because that board is humongous. But that was sort of an anomaly amongst all the different models that were being offered by the company. The company also had available the option of a carry bag for your board, which I had, and to be honest, wasn't the greatest. Like, if you're walking with this thing slung over your shoulder and you got your board in it, it's heavy. In addition to that, it's a very soft form bag, and so it has the potential to move your settings on your pedals and stuff like that. So if you have everything set up in a very specific manner, it wasn't a great option to choose. But they also offered at the time a hard shell case, and this was great because you could carry a number of things inside this case. And I mean like a number of things, not just like cables or whatever, but like a music stand. This thing is huge. Most importantly though, as far as customer service, it really seemed like Chris was on top of it and was making a conscious effort to make all of his customers, especially the ones that have been with him and supporting the company from the very beginning, feel like they're being heard and like they're appreciated and just doing all the things. Most companies I see that claim to have great customer service seem to equate that to having a link on their website where you can click help and it just brings you to their FAQ page, and there's no means of contacting the company directly with a problem. And truthfully, if you're not that big of a company, or you claim not to be that big of a company, and your customers are spending upwards of over $100 on your product, you should probably be able to answer an email and not just send them somewhere else so that you don't have to deal with their problem in that moment. Like, I know it's hard to run a business with a small crew of people, but at the same time, if we look at Holeyboard as an example, a lot of the work that was being done for the company early on was just Chris. So as far as shipping and doing answering of emails and all that stuff, that was all one guy. So that's truly something that is worth noting and is honestly admirable. Around 2018, the company started offering a model known as the Dragonfly. Similar to the same original model of the Holeyboard, but now with the ability to expand the bottom shelf to a wider format in the case that you need more real estate. And this sort of design seems to have been adapted by companies like D'Addario with their Expand series of pedal boards that allow you to expand the space that you have available to put pedals upon on the board. And I believe the Dragonfly was the first pedal board model that Holeyboard offered that wasn't made of wood. And admittedly, when I first saw this model, I wasn't crazy about it because to me, the idea of having a pedal board that can expand and retract in terms of its size, it's similar to the idea of putting like your Les Paul inside a case that's made for a bass guitar. There's just a lot of room in there for things to move around, and as far as transport and just general storage, it's not ideal. But looking back on it now, I think my perspective has changed, and it makes a lot more sense to have a model of a pedal board that you have the ability to change the size of to better suit your needs as you go from one outfit musically to another, rather than having a bunch of pedal boards like some people. And the metal that was being used to construct the board, I assume, was sturdy and strong. But I think in my mind, it just seemed like something that potentially could just get like bent and eventually crack and break at some point down the line. So I just didn't want to mess around with it. And sure, the original boards being made of wood, they had the potential to split, splinter, break, all those things. But those boards are thick. They were real thick. Thick enough that Chris was offering a lifetime warranty on the boards, which I still believe he has standing to this day. But regardless of whether you had a metal construction board or the original wood one, the layout of the board itself was definitely something really functional, and it allowed you to have your stuff laid out in a way that it didn't feel cluttered. You felt like you had a lot more ability to organize everything so that it was fully accessible to you in a live setting or in a studio. Plus, on the underside of the second shelf, you have space where you can put your power supply and strap it in there and power all your pedals that are on the board. The design was bridging the gap between the sort of SKB style pedal boards that's a single layer using Velcro, and the more high-end, usually custom stuff that you would see more well-established musicians using on stage. And sure, you have people out there that argue that the original boards were fairly heavy as far as pedal boards go, but I would argue that pedal boards are only as heavy as what you're really putting on them. Like, all you really need to throw off the balance and the weight of your board is to throw a Dunlop Crybaby on to your board, and that will increase the weight significantly just with one pedal. And yeah, my board personally is heavy, but I also have an abundance of things that are mounted to it. So it's a collection of individual things that culminate in the overall weight that I have to carry around. So, I don't know. Regardless of the weight, I like the fact that I can have everything laid out in a manner where it's easy for me to step on whatever I need to without having to have like organ player shoes on in order to strategically hit the buttons to engage individual effects. So I'm not 100% on the dates, but around the time from 2016 to 2018, there wasn't much activity as far as the company's social media accounts. But a little while after the first post of the Dragonfly model as a photo on the Facebook page, there was a new post of a new model being added to the repertoire available from Holeyboard, and this was in the form of the Holeyboard 123 model. And if you fast forward to present day, currently the company only offers the 123 model as a board that's available for purchase from the company. The company no longer offers the wood models as something that you can get directly from them. You could find some for sale online, but as far as getting one directly from Holeyboard, not going to happen. Instead, the company has gone all in on the powder-coated aluminum design that they have with the 123 model. And this latest model offers not only a slimmer design, but a bit of a different physical form compared to the original board's layout. And they offer it either as a complete package with all the components all ready to be installed together, or you can get the individual components, further expanding on this idea of building the board the size that you need. And honestly, from the first look that I had at these boards, it gave me the vibe of the erector sets from like the 80s. These are like your dad's version of Kinects, essentially. And it just seemed kind of clunky and just dull overall. Like, sure, the original boards were wood, but I saw a lot more potential there than I do with this powder-coated metal platform that they're now utilizing for their pedal boards. And sure, I believe that the aluminum that is being used to construct these boards is like military grade, super strong stuff that's going to last a lifetime. But just visually, I can't get over the lack of character these new boards seem to have. Plus, if you look at it from the front, like ground level, it looks like it's uneven. It kind of like overlaps and stacks, but not evenly. And so, I don't know, maybe that's just my OCD acting up, but like it doesn't vibe with me. And so yeah, initially I was a bit bummed to see this kind of transformation of the company as a whole, but potentially Chris had me covered as far as other options to choose from. In this case, I'm referring to their latest model, the Holeyboard Mini. A very simplistic design, but still maintaining the same format that Holeyboard has been known for, where you can utilize zip ties to strap all the pedals down, but without the second shelf and without all the weird extra components that the new 123 models come with. And so rather than just pass judgment on this new product without actually experiencing it for myself, I decided to go ahead and purchase one. I also ordered some zip ties along with the board because I figured I would need them, and also because the zip ties that Chris offers for his pedal boards, they're some of the best ones for this sort of application. So if you're in the market for some zip ties for your Holeyboard, I highly recommend getting the ones that Holeyboard offers on their website. But when the mailman walked up to my door with a box that had tape on it that said Holeyboard on it, my first thought was, it's an awfully big box for zip ties. And yet still the box was seemingly too small to fit a pedal board into. But as it turned out, the board was actually inside this box as well. So let's take a look at it for a second. As you can see, it is absolutely mini. At this size, it's something that I couldn't really see myself utilizing in the applications that I would need it for, unless I was using like 3 or 4 pedals exclusively, or if I had it on my desk or something, and in which case I have a desk. Why would I get a pedal board for my desk? And don't get me wrong, I could certainly go out and get another Mini to attach to the initial one that I got. The initial one actually comes with a bracket for that purpose of attaching a secondary one to it. But still, I would probably only use it in a home studio capacity because there's no carrying case for this board yet. But all that aside, let's go back to the design of the Mini for a moment. It is a sheet of metal with holes in it. That's it. Like, I could sand it down and paint it a different color if I wanted to, I guess. But aside from the visual aesthetics, what really makes this board different from a board something like the Pedal Train Metro 16 or the Diodario Expand 1? Both of which share similar dimensions to the Mini, but have the option of getting a carrying case that is specific to that model's size. The point I'm trying to get at is that the Holeyboard Mini isn't really contributing something new and unique to the pedal board space. If anything, it's bringing about a less adequate version of something that's already being offered by another company. And the 123 model seems to be an example of the company stepping away from the attributes that originally made the company something special and that really made customers gravitate towards them in the first place. At worst, these serve as examples of a company offering products that can't compete with already existing products from other companies in the same market, and it's not great. Now, to change direction for a moment, I want to go back and talk a little bit about the original design of the Holeyboard Pedalboards. As I said earlier, with the original boards, there was a lot more of a individual and customizable aspect attached to those boards when you got them. I've been able to make it into a project of doing my own custom paint job to my board over the years. Whether it be a simple coat of gold spray paint and some splatters of red acrylic paint and then covering that with some sort of polyurethane coating just to waterproof it, to the more elaborate sort of fire burst design that I've done most recently to the board. Which, by the way, big shout out to the channel Big D Guitars, so glad I get to say that name, for inspiring and really showing me the way in terms of how to go about staining the wood and properly coating it so that it looks nice as the end result. If you're looking to build a guitar, or you're just trying to like do some sort of wood project and you want to add like a nice cool sort of faded stain to it, I highly suggest this channel, and I'll leave a link somewhere around here leading to that channel so you can check them out. But with all that custom work that I put into it, now when I bring my board out to a gig or to go and do some studio work for somebody, I open up the case for it and I put it down, and it's a conversation starter. It's eye-catching, it's something unique. And even the most miserable sound guy will walk up on stage while he's propping mics in front of cabs and stuff and look at my board and say, okay, wow, and have a series of questions to ask about it. And like I had started to mention earlier, it wasn't just me who was doing these sort of custom paint jobs to their board. Lots of other customers of Holeyboard were doing the same thing. And by showcasing photos of these boards up on Holeyboard's Facebook and other social media accounts, it built this sort of community of like-minded individuals that would trade painting ideas and different designs. Some people would do things where they'd have like their band name as a design on the board, cool things like that. And it just made for a real communal sense amongst everyone that had these boards. And you don't really have that same sense of community attached to these new boards. They're just very sterile, and they exist simply to serve the purpose of having a flat surface to put your pedals on, and nothing more. And certainly these new boards maintain that same durability and functionality as the old ones, but they just simply lack that individuality that the original ones managed to have. With all that said, that's not to imply that the original Holeyboards didn't come without their own shortcomings. For example, once you installed that second shelf, while you had space to install a power supply back there and to store some of the wires that were coming off the top shelf pedals, you really didn't have a lot of space to access the stuff going on underneath that top shelf. And so it made it very hard to sort of keep everything organized, keep the wires from becoming sort of a rat's nest underneath this top shelf of pedals. And the solution to that problem wouldn't necessarily be to make the brackets that hold up the second shelf taller, because you don't necessarily want your pedal board to be like a set of stairs that you now have to consciously be aware of this new height that you have to put your foot over in order to access those pedals that are on the top shelf. Plus, the board's already wide enough, you don't need to be tall too. But there's certainly ways to go about addressing this one issue that would actually add more functionality to the board itself. Like offering some sort of way to move that second shelf so that you have access underneath it. After this most recent paint job, I decided that I was going to try to go about installing hinges underneath that top shelf on my board. And once I found the perfect ones for the job, it's been an absolute game changer. I still am able to have the same layout that I want as far as my pedals on the board itself, but if I find myself having issues as far as connectivity, or I run into a snag with a power cable or something like that, rather than having to go and grab my needle nose pliers and a flashlight and trying to fidget around from one side of the shelf, I can just flip it open and I can look and see everything and I can reach everything. And like I said, it's changed the game. And with the way I have everything set up currently, the way that I go about keeping the top shelf from moving in a live setting or just in transport is just by using 2 more zip ties to hold the shelf down, which is fine. I don't need that top shelf to flip open at all times. It's not like a car at a car show where someone walks over and you want to show them what the engine looks like. I only need it to be open when I need it to be open. But now I also don't need to worry about having to unscrew the top shelf and trying to keep everything still attached on top and not pulling any cables unnecessarily from where they're plugged in, just so I can find and deal with like one singular problem. And if this was something that Holeyboard had incorporated into their original design, it would put their original boards in competition with companies like Vertex, who offer sort of like flip open shelves on their boards, but it would be offered at a fraction of the cost that Vertex is offering for their stuff, which for all of us broke boys out there would be an awesome thing to see. And while I'm not entirely sure, I feel like maybe for a brief moment Chris offered like custom paint jobs for pedal boards and stuff like that, where you could add your band's logo and things like that with your order. You don't really have that as an option anymore with this new design that the company is offering, except for the limited edition board that they offer in conjunction with the company Third Man Hardware, which is essentially Jack White. It's his company. And the difference in that board is that it has a panel that is yellow. So while it may be limited, it's certainly not a special edition. And this is the issue that I find myself having when it comes to limited edition or signature gear overall. More often than not, what's being offered isn't something new and different from the standard model. It might be a different color, or it incorporates some minor differences from the standard model, or it just simply has an artist's signature somewhere on it, and so then the company decides to tack the price up by $300. Or in the case of specifically guitars, you're getting something that is a painstaking recreation of the artist's original instrument, with all the dings and scratches, chips in the paint, cigarette burns, and all these things that make it look exactly like the original. But now you have to be a doctor in order to be able to afford it. In my opinion, if you were going to do like a limited edition or a special edition signature board of some sort, it's got to incorporate something that makes it unique and vastly different from the standard models that you have to offer. Because it's not always the case, but for the most part, a paint job is something that isn't necessarily out of reach from the customer to just do themselves. Like, for example, you could do something like what Voodoo Labs has done with their pedal boards, having an add-on, in this case the Dingus, which is a cable routing module that you screw onto the underside of your pedal board and that you route all your cabling to, so that now your cable going from your guitar is on the same side of the board as your cable that's going out to your amp. Kind of decluttering what you have going on as far as your floor space on a stage, or just in general, making it so that you're not trying to navigate through a bunch of vines on the floor. It's a small detail, but it does make a world of difference. Or you could build on that same concept and offer a board that has buffers already installed on it. So now you have a buffered input and a buffered output, so that when you have your vastly intricate signal chain, you don't have to worry about having any signal loss through all these different stops along the way. It's gonna help you maintain your same volume and the same clarity as far as high frequencies that you have from your original sound if you were to plug your guitar directly into your amp. One of the products that Chris used to offer on his website were these pedals that had a lamp on them with an LED light, basically allowing you to be able to see the surface of your pedal board, similar in the way that a orchestra player would have lights on their music stand so they can see their music. A very simple idea, and I believe it also had a feature where you could plug a USB cable into it if you needed to charge your phone as well. So like a double win. Imagine you had a pedal board that already came with these features installed on it. That would make it pretty unique. You could even call it something like the Conductor. Give it a clever name that relates back to the idea of a orchestra conductor and those lamps on the music stand. Something like that. And you could do all these little things in conjunction with a unique paint job. And some of you out there might think, well, I could just get lights myself. Yeah, I went out and got hinges myself. Yes, but what if the company offered these additions to the board as something that was professionally installed and specifically made for these purposes? Then you wouldn't have to go through the same process I went through, where I bought like 8 or 9 different types of hinges to find the ones that were gonna fit what I needed properly. Like, I still have hinges. I have a drawer full of hinges. It's stupid. And limited editions and customizations aside, let's go back and let's talk about the other model that Holeyboard used to offer, the Square. I had mentioned earlier that amongst the flagship models that Holeyboard initially offered, one of them was the Square, a square-shaped version of the same idea as the original board, with two shelves, but now instead of it being curved, you have just a square, very angular format. And this format arguably would be perfect if you're a guitarist that's using a loop switcher or something like a Quad Cortex or some other multi-effects processor in conjunction with other effects on your board. But you don't want everything in a curved manner where you might have some stuff that's kind of dipping over the curves in the board. But not just that, because of the square format of the board, you now have a shelf that potentially gives you the option of being able to put more than one power supply underneath that secondary shelf. And it still fits in that hard shell case that the company previously offered. And truly at the root of all of this, I just want it. I just want this board. Like, with all my heart, I want a Square. It's been impossible to find one. I've reached out to Chris. Chris, I'm sure you've seen my emails. I'm sure you've seen my messages on Facebook. And you're making me feel like Stan in that Eminem song.
It's been 6 months and still no word. I don't deserve it. I know you got my last 2 letters. I wrote the addresses on them perfect.
Which, by the way, for all the parents out there, is actually where the term Stan comes from when your kids are talking about something that they love a whole lot or that they're a huge fan of. And your kids probably don't even know that that's the origin of the term Stan. But I digress. It's nowhere on the internet for sale. I've looked on Reverb. There's one of these phantom listings on Reverb where it looks like it's there and you put it on your watch list, but then you read through some more after you wipe the drool away from your face and it says that this item's already been sold. So, you know, you get your dreams crushed once again. And I don't know, man, like, it's just the board that got away. And so I think I just honestly have to let it go. But I still want it. I really don't have any sort of real conclusion to this video. I kind of set out with the intent of showing off some of the real strong points and the unique attributes that made Holeyboard the company that it once was. And I guess, if anything, I hope that somehow, some way, Chris will find a way to bring the company back somehow to its old form. Either by offering the old board models again, or by doing a revamp somehow using metal, or adding new additions to these new boards, just to kind of allow the company to stay afloat amongst all the other competition that's out there. I know that the operation for the company is very, very small. I'm not sure how many more people are working with Chris when it comes to doing these boards present day, but I think there's still room for improvement or even to revisit old designs, stuff that you know is tried and true amongst your customers. And to be clear, I love Holeyboards. The original designs are my favorite, but I just love the general idea attached to what these boards are and how they function. The bass player in my band, Our Fears, he also has a Holeyboard, and since he first put his stuff on that board and started using it at rehearsal, immediately he was like, why doesn't everyone just do this? The design is great for what it offers to the player utilizing the board in terms of functionality, and you can't argue with it. It's great. It's a great design. And again, a great design that's available for a bunch of broke boys. People that don't have the kind of money to go out and get a custom-made pedal board with all these high-end features attached to it. So Chris, if you see this, if you're out there, I first want to just say thank you. Thank you for making really cool products that since day one, since I first discovered them, I've been enamored with. And I've found to be something truly unique to this space amongst all the music equipment that's out there on the market. And I hope you don't take this as me trying to badmouth your company in any sort of way. If anything, I was setting out to really point out the attributes of your company and your products that I truly have grown to love. And point out some of the things that I think if they were addressed in some sort of way would be able to reach a wider audience of people and have those people feel the same way that I do about the products that you have to offer. I think that's all I got for you guys for today. I hope you found this video to be interesting. If you didn't know about Holeyboard before, now you do. Go check him out. Check out the stuff that he's got up there. You might even find those products that he has to offer right now something that will be beneficial to your needs. So definitely give it a look. I'll leave a link down in the description for Holeyboard. And if you are someone who happens to have a square in your possession that's in good condition and that you're not using, I'm just saying that I know a guy that would love to have it and that doesn't want to pay $1,000 for it. So hit me up. Hit me up. And if you like today's video and you haven't already and you want to support the channel, be sure to hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button. It definitely helps with growing the channel and making these videos something that is more visible to more people. So, help me out. And if you would like to support the channel further than just liking and subscribing, I'll also leave a link down below in the description to my Patreon page where you can check out the list of all the perks that are attached to your support. And with all that said, that's all I got for now. Thank you guys for sticking around and checking the video out today. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep playing. Peace. Oh God. This thing is kind of heavy. Anyway,